I think it's a timely conversation to review the landscape of tech sales and careers in 2024 because I'm actively looking for a tech sales job. The way I do research is I go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator and I start looking through all their employees just to get a sense of, and that approach is a little bit more bold than perhaps I would at a big public company.
On this week's episode of the Higher Levels podcast, I had a chance to sit down with Trent Dressel, who many of you may know from YouTube, among other social media platforms. He's made tons of content, both about cold calling in particular, but many things about the tech sales landscape, what it's like to be a rep and beyond. Something we discussed today, and really the premise for this episode. If you don't know, one, Trent actually lives in my building here in Austin, Texas, which prompted this conversation. But two, Trent was actually fired from his tech sales job a year ago, has since gone on to be a solopreneur and had success in many ways, and is now looking to actually break back into tech sales as an account executive in 2024. What we wanted to do is sit down today and discuss some of the major differences from when we broke in 2019-ish, 2020, when the market was insanely hot. There's tons of opportunities still out there, but we wanted to really deep dive into some of the nuances, some of the differences if you're a candidate that's either trying to break into tech sales or maybe make a move externally and be an account executive at a different company. There's lots of great nuggets in here today. Trent, appreciate the time, and I hope everyone gets a lot out of our conversation.
Trent, my man, what's going on?
I'm fired up to be in the Higher Level studio with tech sales Eric on the 38th floor, downtown Austin, Texas.
Dude, little known fact for everyone watching, we actually live in the same building. So yeah, when you moved here to Austin, obviously connected, and yeah, here we are making it happen. So
enjoying ourselves, sipping on quality espressos and looking at the beautiful lake running through downtown Austin, Texas. So we're feeling good.
Oh yeah. Well, cool. I thought it'd be a good chance. Like, obviously we've talked a ton offline, pre-recording and all of these different things about, I think the main topic for today being how the landscape has completely changed. Like you and I think you broke into tech sales a little bit before me. And then obviously now it's probably a lot different. And I know you're kind of considering your next move and what that might be. So I'd love to dive into that for everyone's reference of kind of before and after, what you did then, how that changes now. But more than anything, I think it's a good chance to just delve into our stories. But I don't know, Trent, anything on your mind, top of mind, before we start diving deep into the sauce?
I think it's a timely conversation to review the landscape of tech sales and careers in 2024 because I'm actively looking for a tech sales job, an account executive, and I've really spent a lot of time looking at my preferences. Do I want to go fully remote? Do I want to find an office in Austin? And as I contrast that back to when I first got into tech sales in 2018, right out of college, no experience, no connections, never had a sales internship, I think things have changed a lot. And having helped a lot of people get into tech sales and now doing it again, doing the dance again, it's I think this conversation will hopefully help me process the best strategy so I can get the best outcome, the most money at the most promising company that I'm really excited about. That's where we're at right now.
Yeah. No, really, really great insights. And I think I want to plant a flag specifically in that, talking about how to get the job the most money, especially in our situations as account executives. It's not just getting a job. I think sometimes as an SDR, there may be merit of just getting that first job. But yeah, to your point, I think I'm really excited to dive into your outlook on how you're going to try and maximize whatever your next opportunity is as well. Maybe for everyone's reference, like obviously you're on YouTube, you've been doing this 4+ years on YouTube.
Just hit the 4-year anniversary this month, and it started April 11th, 2020, posted my first YouTube video, and have now posted over 1,000 videos talking about tech sales.
Yeah, so I'm sure
many and cold calling.
Slight footnote. Cold calling. Footnote. I think if you search cold calling, you're on like 7 of 10 of the first page results.
But, we made a few cold calls in our life.
Yeah. But maybe for everyone listening, right? Obviously, a lot of people watching this probably maybe making their next move in their career and or breaking into tech sales altogether. Maybe just starting very briefly at like your story breaking in. And I think that'll also set the stage for where you're at now, looking to break back in. So anyway, starting at the beginning, breaking in, let's start there and maybe sharing your experience, what it was like, and we'll break it down.
Sure. And I think to revisit the point I just made around money, it's not ultimately all about chasing the most money. I think culture fit and making sure you're at an organization that you like, that you're proud of, that you're excited to work for is really important. And that was a key consideration when I first broke into tech sales in 2018. It was my senior year of college. And it was actually 2017, now that I think about this. It was 2017, that first semester. I entered that year having no career prospects. I didn't have an internship. Like when I say this, I think people think I'm kidding, but I actually didn't do an internship. I spent the summer in Athens, Ohio, basically having fun. That's where my university was, Ohio University. So I enter senior year with no resume built, no credentials on paper, no relevant experience. I had started to get involved in some student organizations the year before. So I was at ground zero. And what I did was I started speaking with a bunch of people. I said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I remember someone that I respected a lot at the time. They said, I want to be an enterprise software sales rep. And I left that conversation having no idea what that meant or even knowing the tech industry was a thing, actually. But I thought it sounded cool. So I realized, all right, sales is what I'm going to do. Grew up in a business household. I'm meant to get into sales. So my entire goal was to get a sales job in a big city outside of Ohio. That was it. So I started writing that down every single day because I was reading Think and Grow Rich at the time. And I was like, manifestation, let me write it down and I'll get the job. So I started writing it down every day, partying on the weekends, we're having fun as a senior. And I asked myself, what resources do I have? I happen to be in a sales organization and we have a career fair coming up. So I started to build my resume. I went to the career center and said, can you help me build a resume? I went there probably 11 times to get the resume built. I researched the companies at the career fair ahead of time because that was the low-hanging fruit. That's what I had access to at the time. Identified a few companies that would be there hiring for sales jobs outside of Ohio. So I went up to all their booths. I gave them a resume and said, I'd like to interview. And eventually I started getting some interviews. I didn't really apply to any jobs outside of that because I didn't know what to look for. I had no idea what I just went to the career fair. I got interviews from that. I got an offer from Camping World. I almost sold camping RVs. I got an interview.
Would love to see that, by the way. That would have been awesome.
How much different would think? I wouldn't be sitting up here in the higher level studio with Tech Sales Eric if I was selling RVs. So, long story short, I got very lucky. There was a fast growing private software company that I had no idea what it would turn into that offered me an SDR sales development rep position. My on target earnings that I accepted was about $40,000 at the time. Wow. This was start date for July of 2018.
2018, wow.
And they said, hey, you'll start as an SDR, you'll promote to an account executive, which is the next level closing role in like 6 months. A few weeks before I started, the sales manager called me and said, hey, we're really excited to have you come out. We just changed our SDR program and it's going to be about 12 to 18 months to promote now. I just wanted to let you know. And so that's what I ended up accepting a job going into. I think they changed the OTE to like 47K, 50K. And I got super fortunate breaking in the technology industry because I didn't necessarily know that was the type of sales job I wanted. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, that's the place that you want to do sales. You want to be selling software, technology. That's where the most upside's at, in my view.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting because I think we all find our different paths in. I think, then there were probably, I'm curious, maybe more a question around what did you feel? I know you mentioned you find this organization at a career fair and you kind of locked in on them and maybe one or two others, but didn't look outside of that. How do you feel, if you think back to that time, the availability of jobs was maybe compared to today, just for everyone's reference as well?
In 2018, if we zoom out, we were still part of the zero interest rate period. So these companies, they called it ZIRP. So these tech companies that may not be as profitable, that have a lot of pressure on their margins, they can borrow money very cheaply, basically for free. So they're able to grow much faster and cheaper, which allows them to hire for more positions. So there's 1 million positions. Every company's hiring in a zero interest rate period because money's free. So why not hire more people? As we fast forward to 2024, April, May, start of Q2, we find ourselves really high interest rates. People are having tough times buying houses. Unemployment is low, but there's less jobs available because these companies have had to tighten the belt, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And I think more people have discovered that if they're going to do sales because they want to control their destiny, it's a performance-based career, much better than trading your time for money in most other careers.
Yeah.
That you want to be selling tech and software because the cultures tend to be the best. And there's a ton of upside. And especially as you think about remote work, a lot of people want that. And that is the most remote friendly job there is.
Yeah. 100%. Maybe for everyone's reference too, right? Like obviously we've seen a ton of your videos on YouTube and all of these different things. Like I think when I look back on my experience, it's funny. I think the biggest thing for me when I first broke into sales was overthinking, overanalyzing. Like I studied engineering, so I have more of that analytical background, and that's, you know, all I did for my entire time in undergrad. I would love to maybe just tap into like your interview experience. We don't have to like break it down round by round, but like how, looking back, how unprepared or prepared did you feel? And like, what are the things you look back at and maybe laugh at how horribly you did them?
So I'll just tell you, I walked into this interview with the company I ended up accepting an offer with. I was wearing a suit and they were wearing sweatshirts. And it was on our campus because I had no idea. Culturally, that's another part, is it's a lot more progressive, and they're wearing t-shirts and sweatshirts. I'm wearing a suit. So immediately you feel a bit conflicted in that, which I thought was funny. The other thing is I think you try and over prepare. How will you respond to what is your biggest weakness, or tell me about yourself, when in reality it's just a conversation. It's like this. They asked me, how many windows are there in the state of Utah? And I said, oh, that's a really interesting question. Let me process this. They're going to ask you things that you did not expect. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. So I think at the time, I put a lot of pressure on myself to be something I wasn't, to try and put on a front, to overcompensate for perhaps a lot of deep-seated insecurity, because I never had real-world sales experience. And I'll tell a specific story. It's part of this whole interview process. Through a mutual connection of a professor, I got access to fly out to Boston to interview with Dell EMC.
Nice.
And I had just received the offer from the software company I was telling you about. So I received the offer. I knew I was going to fly out for this interview day in Boston, and this will encapsulate the entire interview point. I told the company I need an extension on this offer. I'm going to go out to interview with this other company. So that's one point, is be willing to ask the tough questions, be willing to push back. And they were like, cool, go do it. So I go out to Boston, and I remember recording myself before the morning of. I'm wearing this suit, and I actually wrote out a letter basically saying, I already have an offer. You need to give me an offer by this date, or I'm going to go do that. That was such a mistake. I think I was trying to overcompensate. I found myself in this room with 50 other qualified people from the top universities. They're like, where'd you go to college? Where'd you intern at? And I'm like, Ohio. They're like, Ohio State? I said, no, Ohio University, south of Columbus. And I was acting like someone I wasn't. And that's the cliche advice, is be yourself, because if you're not yourself, you won't appear to be authentic, and you'll eventually get exposed, and will actually backfire on you. So that is the main lesson with the interviews, is treat it like you're just talking to a friend. Yeah. Be yourself. And if you're not actually the person that's meant for that role, it's not going to work. You can't force it.
Yeah. 100%. I think, it's always hard to find the line. I know obviously we both coach people breaking in, and it's like, I see the spectrum of, people who are coming in hot and heavy, and they don't know, like, if I'm saying anything that doesn't represent how you feel about it, like, correct me, but I definitely relate to this in the sense that when I first looked at sales, it sounds like you would see like bits and pieces of what you collectively thought a salesperson was, and then are kind of just like, okay, that's what I got to do, and like do that, versus like the other side though is maybe someone who's like overly prepared. If you tell them to like just have a conversation, that can and cannot hit home. So anyway, I think you did a great job like laying it out and giving some insight into that. And I think like when it comes to, conversations and maybe a good transition into how you're going about it now. And I know there's like, aside from the actual conversations and interviews themselves, there's tons we would get into, but maybe for that person that's newer to tech sales, trying to break in and hears you say, just have a conversation, through the analogy of what you're doing now and how you would change your approach, how would you describe how you're better at just having a conversation now, if that makes sense?
Everyone loves to talk in terms of negotiation hacks, and I think there's a lot of popularity with Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, and there's the FBI spy guy that I see gets a lot of popularity. But I really think a fundamental truth with this interviewing and even sales conversations is whoever wants it more basically has less leverage. So for example, if you are approaching this job interview really hoping, if only they like me then, or, oh man, if I don't get this offer, I don't know what I'm going to do. Yeah. You're going to probably come across as more needy and desperate. And that will actually turn the other person off. They will value you less. This is why it's so hard if you do not have an active job to then go get a job because they know that you're not actively employed. Whereas if you're actively employed at, let's say, a competitor of theirs, and they are reaching out trying to convince you to come interview with them, they naturally will want you much more. They'll place more value on you because you're not actually looking for them, and they want you more than you want them. So I'd say that that's a big point that I'm considering is I'm never approaching it seeking validation from them because it's incredibly disvalidating when you're applying to companies and you don't hear anything back, or whenever you apply and get rejected, or whenever you do an interview and you put all this work into it and they tell you no. I've gone through those things and it really makes you question your sense of self-worth. And then I think some people eventually settle because they'll be so desperate to get that validation. So that's a big difference in how I'm approaching it. Is I am employed right now. I don't need a job. I don't need to work. I'm being very selective with the companies I'm speaking with. So I'm approaching opportunities that I'm not qualified for. And I'm trying to create more urgency and demand by framing it that, hey, this is why I believe I'm a good fit, and leading with a perspective or a point of view. And I'll give you one example. There's a Series A funded company that I'm very interested in, less than 50 employees, fully remote, love what they're doing with the product. I identified this company. I identified the one open role they're hiring for, which is technically not a sales role, but if you're going for a small startup like that, you got to get creative and you got to work with what you got. So what I did was I applied to the role. I found all of the main people on LinkedIn, both co-founders, the leader of people, the head of sales, connected with them all, and then the next day recorded a video of me pitching their product to them. The product had been out for a month, and I put slides. Here is the problem. Here's the solution. Here's the outcome. And here's how I align with your cultural values. I record a video, and then I email that to all of them and basically say, hey, I'm interested in your mission. I love what I see with your product. I'd like to speak with you. Haven't heard back yet, but that's just one example of how I'm trying to go about this process differently than I did in the past. In the past, it was, what is available, let me just apply to it and then hope it works out. Whereas now I'm saying, I don't need a job. I don't need them to approve of me. It needs to be mutual. I need to really resonate with them. They need to resonate with me, and it needs to be a great fit. And that's the only way it's going to work. And whether that will take a week or months to figure out, that's part of the process.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you actually brought up in that response a good question too. I think a lot of people can hopefully relate to where they're breaking in. I'd love to understand too, when you go back to that time where you were considering the offer you had in hand versus that interview with Dell EMC. This is a great position that, hopefully people find themselves in, balancing multiple offers or multiple interviews. How would you conduct yourself differently if you're in that situation again, where you maybe have an offer in hand or you've got 4 final round interviews coming up? I would love to pick into that too.
So first and foremost, I was speaking with someone the other day that had 3 interviews lined up, and they identified one company they wanted the most by far, so they canceled the other 2 interviews. And then a day or 2 later, the main company that they had the interview with basically said, we're actually not doing this internship program anymore, so we're going to cancel the interview. Damn. And they were left with nothing. Yeah. So that's just one important point is never put all of your eggs in one basket, the old cliche, but it's important to diversify. And you may get really excited about a company, but you still got to find multiple other companies because it is a numbers game. You ultimately need to identify a list of companies. You need to apply to the open roles. You need to get interviews and then eventually get offers. Those are the metrics that actually would matter for something like this. But as I think about this time around and multiple offers, you don't want to overplay your hand. So when I went into Dell EMC with an active offer from a company I felt good about, I tried to use it as too much leverage, when in reality I didn't have as much leverage as I thought, because I went into Dell and basically said, I actively said, I already have this offer. They've given me an extension. Basically give me an offer so I can make a decision, versus leading with trying to be the best fit authentically for the position and then subtly saying, yeah, I'm also speaking with this other company and I got an offer, but I'm pretty open-minded and excited to be here type thing. So I wouldn't have necessarily led with having the offer thinking that would give me more leverage. I think it actually backfired. But ultimately, if you think about demand, if you have multiple bidders for something, it's going to create a bidding war. And that's why eBay is a successful business, because people see it, they see someone else bid more, and then now there's a time limit, and now they're more inclined to bid. So if you are in a job search situation where you can get just one offer, you now are playing with house money in a way, because none of the offer, if you feel good about that offer, you could accept it, or you could continue playing the game to try and get more offers. Perhaps use that as leverage to say, look, I want to go with you, but they're offering me more. Can you match this?
Yeah.
When they give you an offer, oftentimes there's pay bands and they have room to give you more, or there's different things you can negotiate. There are no rules, and most people are confined by this structure thinking that there's rules. There really are no rules. So how can you create yourself to be more valuable? And if you have more offers, that's the best situation you want to be in.
Yeah, for sure. And no, like I think, so transitioning more now to today, right? You gave the example of the Series A company. I think one thing people struggle with is, where do I even apply? What company should I even look at? So I'd love to tap into and understand your process for, like you mentioned earlier, it's not all about the dollar amount. There's culture, there's fit, there's products that you want to actually believe in are great and well positioned, and all of these different things. How do you begin to break down where you should even apply? Like for you and your own situation, I don't know if you've made lists, or you just generally being in the industry now for 5+ years, kind of know the major players. Like, how do you think about where should I apply and all these different things?
Sure. So just so the audience understands, I started in software sales in 2018 as a sales development rep level 1, and then promoted 6 times to a senior account executive level 5. Was able to 6x my income roughly, make 60,000 cold calls, and have real results, 1.54 million in ARR, annual recurring revenue closed. Nice. So I fortunately have real results that will allow me different opportunities than someone who has no results will have. So that's a fundamental reality. So just so everyone understands where I'm coming from. Yeah. And I just moved to Austin. So I'm living downtown Austin, and I'm working for my family business, and I'm generating income on my own through the YouTube channel. So I'm in a position where I don't need to get the job, but I want to get the job. That's how I'm approaching it. So as I think about what opportunities would best suit my interest, I start by identifying my work preferences. So I think, do I want to work for a big public company like CrowdStrike down in Austin, like Snowflake, that's very mature, that's going to pay really well, like AWS, Google, everyone knows these big names, they pay really well, typically public companies, thousands of employees? Or do I want to go on a smaller spectrum of more of a private company, perhaps venture capital backed, that has funding? And if the company has funding, someone must believe it's a good idea. Someone must believe there's product market fit. And it could be an indicator that there may be an exit at some point, meaning the company gets purchased via M&A, a strategic buyer, or goes public. And at my previous company, both of those things happen. Yeah. And whenever those things happen, it can be positive for the employees if you have some sort of ownership or equity. So when I think about what's right for me, I'm identifying big company, small company, public, private, fully remote versus an office versus hybrid, along with what does the company do? Who do they sell software to? Am I looking at a company like Procore who sells to construction people? Am I looking at a company like SurveyMonkey that sells surveys to marketers? Am I looking at a company like Snowflake where I can't even describe what they do or who they sell to or the IT thing? So as you think about what you're actually curious about, I think that's a very important consideration. So for example, I post sales content, I'm in that world. It'd be interesting to sell a product like Clary or like Gong that sells to salespeople. Yeah. Or I had previously sold to HR people. So should I go work at a company like Workday that is a leader selling to HR people? So these are all considerations for me. And most people, to answer your question, don't know where to apply. They don't know what they're looking for. And they'll get a lot of variability in that process. They will go to LinkedIn, they'll click on jobs, they'll type in sales development, and all of a sudden they'll see 136,000 jobs and say, wow, I figured it out. Let me start quick applying. Yeah. And what I've seen is most people, for every 100 jobs you quick apply to, you'll probably hear back from about 4% of those, and they get interviews with 2 of them. So you'll have probably a 2% conversion rate if you just have an average resume. And there's a lot of volatility with what company will you actually end up at. You have no idea. So I think about it that the skills to get a sales job are the same skills you will use in the sales job. So what skills do you use in the sales job? You build a territory plan of companies you're going to target. That's what I do in the job search. Look at my preferences and then start finding companies and get them in a spreadsheet. I'm only adding a company to that spreadsheet if I feel really good about it. So right now on my spreadsheet, there's 7 companies. Wow. I'm then going into that company and making sure, are they hiring for a position that I believe I could get? I'm going after positions that require basically 2x the sales experience I have. So they require 10 years of experience. I got 5. So I'm not settling. I'm going for stretch roles, knowing that it's going to be harder to get in. So to compensate for that, after I apply, I then do what I just described. I go on LinkedIn. I have LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I find all the people that could influence that process. I connect with them, and then I start prospecting them. So today, I made about 8 cold calls to this entire startup. No one answered. So you know what I did? Yeah. I went to their website, found their sales number. I called the sales number.
Really?
And the sales guy answered. He's like, hello? He's like, do you want a demo? And I said, no, I'm actually calling for this open position. Who would I need to speak with? He's like, I'll pass your number to HR. Yeah. So that's getting scrappy. How many other people do you think have done that to apply to a role there?
Yeah.
Probably no one. So that's how I'm thinking about finding companies. It's very meticulous, very curated. It may take me a day just to find 2 companies. Wow. But that's part of the process, because as you think about the commitment of what you're going to give to this company, so much of your life, so much time and energy will be spent into this. So you cannot get it wrong. Yeah. You have to feel great about it. Yeah. And if you don't feel great about it because you've put yourself in a situation where you lost your job, rent's coming up, you don't have any money, and you just got to settle for a position. I know people who have to do that. That's a sad place to be. You don't want to be in that place. And also, I don't think you want to be in a place. A friend of mine was just doing a job search where he was just reaching out to companies because he hadn't been in the game for 8 months, and he was settling. And I said, hey, I think this is below what you're capable of. And he got mad at me at first, but he realized, you're right. I was just seeking validation from them. It felt good to get the offers. I need to go after better companies. And that's what he did. And then he just landed a job at Gong.
Wow.
And that's what it takes. So it takes time.
That's funny. I was going to say, as a side note, I think Gong, that would be wild. Trent, final form, encouraged to post on LinkedIn while in seat.
If I'm encouraged to post,
I don't think the world's ready to.
If I post new job update, I'm excited to say I started at Gong.
Yeah.
That would be,
man.
It'd be fun times.
I would love to. No, this is great, and I think really, really great stuff there. One of the things that comes up a lot too with people asking in comments or wherever they may is like this concept of cold calling hiring managers. I think that's a newer thing that has popped up in the recent years in terms of like in the past, a quality LinkedIn message would kind of break through the noise. I still think it does, but more people are wise to the fact that you should send a message to the hiring manager. So there's way more, and it's harder to stand out than it was maybe 2 to 3 years ago, if that's fair to say. So a lot more people are cold calling hiring managers, and I'd love maybe not even like a formal role play or anything, but like how would you, for everyone's reference, like structure a cold call? Let's say that the hiring manager actually picks up, like how are you constructing that cold call? And or like even if we ad hoc wanted to do like a live role play, we could, but I don't want to put you on the spot. But I think obviously with your experience cold calling, that would be a fun one to kind of dive into for everyone's reference. So
let's do it. Let's do a role play.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So the context is you're a founder named Ralph, and you're a Series A funded company. You have one open position you're hiring for, and that's the context.
Okay. What's the position, by the way? Sorry.
Let's just say it's sales.
Sales.
So just general sales.
General sales.
I'm just
My name's Ralph.
Your name's Ralph.
Okay. All right.
Ring, 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 ring.
Hello.
Hey, Ralph. My name is Trent. The reason I'm giving you a call is I had sent you an email 3 days ago with an application video for the open position for sales. I'm curious, are you still looking to fill that position?
Yeah. I think we're actively interviewing people.
Amazing. I was hoping you'd say that. I'm really interested in your company for XYZ reasons. I resonate with the mission. I resonate with the culture. I bring 5 years of software sales experience, and I'm really interested in speaking with your team. Who would be the best person on your team to speak with to be able to get an interview set up?
I guess that would be our HR team.
All right. So I noticed in my research that that would be Shea in HR. I had sent her an email as well. Would you be able to pass my information along to Shea, or what would be the best way to get in contact with her so I can put my best foot forward?
Yeah, I guess if you reached out, are you guys already in communication, or?
I had sent her an email. I actually put together a video of me pitching your product to you just so you can see what I'm all about. I'd sent her the email. I sent you the email. Would it be appropriate for me to maybe send you a follow-up email so you have my information and you could forward it along to Shea?
Yeah, that sounds good. I can forward your information, and appreciate the call.
Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate it, Ralph, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Nice. All right.
So that's all I would do. Is I was really thinking about this today because I was actually calling this company, and I identified the founder, that's who they are, the leader of sales, and the leader of HR. I called them all today. The numbers I was calling, the first one was invalid, and then I found the real one. That's why I ended up having to call the sales line. But I was thinking about, depending on who I'm calling, if I'm calling the founder, I'm not going to really go into some crazy pitch. I'm just saying the reason I'm calling you is I sent you an email a few days ago with this application. I want them to see the email. That's the main thing. And then secondly, I want to validate, are you still looking for this position? So either they know or they don't know. And then once they confirm, all right, great, reiterate my interest, who I am. So now they're thinking, all right, this is interesting. Who would be the best person to speak with? Because they even though they are the owner, someone else would actually oversee deciding if you get the role or not. Oh, that's HR. Okay, great. I already know HR is important here. I've already reached out to HR. I need to get HR's attention. All right, so can you help me get basically a hold of HR? So all of a sudden he gets off the call. He's going to send her a Slack message. I'm going to send him another email. And one way or another, she's going to take a look at it. Doesn't guarantee she'll respond. Yeah. But how many people are doing that?
Yeah,
not many people are doing that.
Yeah.
Let alone have actually spent 4 hours researching to make a 7-minute video.
Yeah,
that's what I did. I pitched the product with the belief that it's better than any other salespeople today. I was thinking if they could just look at this is better than, and they're gonna send it to their salespeople saying he's better than everyone we have today. Like, we got to give this guy a look. Yeah. And that approach is a little bit more bold than perhaps I would at a big public company.
Yeah.
So if you're going for a small startup, it's going to be a little different than if you're going for Microsoft Azure. So keep that in mind with your boldness. But ultimately, like you said, it's more competitive. How are you going to stand out?
Yeah, for sure. And just quick follow up on that too. Like, if you are going for a bigger company, is it the personas that change? Is it the amount of research you do? Like, maybe just for everyone watching, like what would change if you're going for, I think Cloudflare has like 10,000 plus employees, right? So what would you do in that situation differently?
So I'm looking at CrowdStrike, and they're a $70 billion market cap cybersecurity company. And the way I do research is I go to LinkedIn Sales Navigator and I start looking through all their employees just to get a sense of SMB, small, medium business, mid-market, corporate, enterprise. Who are the different players here? Talent acquisition. Who's in talent acquisition? Recruiting. It's more of a guessing game because their talent acquisition department could be 12 people. They could have 300 sales reps, 50 sales managers. They could have a lot of people in HR and a VP of HR who's so disconnected from the hiring. So that's the challenge of bigger companies is you cannot always pinpoint who exactly you need to be reaching out to. Whereas at the small company, there's one HR person, there's one salesperson, there's one founder. So I know definitively those are the influencers. Those are the decision makers that will decide if they give me an interview and will decide if I get an offer. Whereas at the big company, it's typically by committee. You don't always know who it is, and it's harder to network your way in those companies. So that's why a network would matter. So I know someone at CrowdStrike. I sent him a text and I said, who's the best enterprise manager? He didn't know. So that wasn't helpful. But then he's like, hey, my AE said he'll refer you. Newsflash, if someone refers you, I don't think it helps your odds. It just gives them a bonus if you end up getting hired. So the referrals don't really matter. But the thing not to lose sight of, how are the recruiters incentivized? They get compensated based on hiring people, and ideally those people stay for 6 months, whatever. They have a quota. They're in sales. Their game is selling these open positions to get them hired. So you are helping them be more successful by reaching out to them, by sharing as much about you as possible, and convincing them to get you an interview. Can they get you the interview? Who can get you the interview? And that's why you want to be reaching out to these people, because that's how they get paid.
Yeah.
So you're doing their job for them.
Yeah.
I'm doing them all a favor.
No, that's hilarious. No, it's good deep dive. Yeah, I think I don't know, is there anything high level that I missed, or like, I think that's great. A lot of context, a lot of great examples. Yeah. Anything else come to mind?
Patience. I decided recently that I was going to go back on this journey, and you sit there questioning, just you're throwing these shots into the universe, and sometimes you don't hear back. I think I'm qualified enough to get a position, to get a account executive position at a good company. I think I have what it takes, but they don't always know that, or they don't know who you are. So I think just staying patient, that your opportunity will come, and that's what the experience is like. A lot of not hearing back, a lot of persistence, and just because you don't hear back, or just because you don't get the offer, that's not a condition upon which you should be more or less confident. I think it's you being yourself, accepting yourself, regardless of the job or not. Because if you define yourself by getting the job, or define yourself by the performance in the job, it most likely will lead to dissatisfaction.
Yeah. Well, my hope is that we see peak Trent Dressel form at Gong. Posting on LinkedIn multiple times a day, dude. That might fingers crossed. Dude.
That would be the pinnacle of everything.
The third eye fully activated.
Get a Gong tattoo. Yeah. I've accepted a position at Gong, and I'll be here the rest of my career. Expect 3 LinkedIn posts a day.
Yeah,
and there's nothing you can do about it.
I accepted an offer at Gong. I am very excited. Multiple returns in between the lines, dude. So
I'm back.
Exactly.
I'm back.
Yeah. So awesome.
That'd be amazing. And if you know, you know, but most people won't know. But
yeah, so,
that's it.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's a great place to call it. I don't know. Hopefully, we'll look back on this. The universe 6 months from now will be like, that's when the universe decided to give Trent a Gong AE deal, not because he wanted it, but because Eric wanted it, and everybody else.
Maybe we'll have to run this back whenever I do accept the position. So yeah. We'll see if everyone's interested in hearing that.
Oh yeah. Well, cool. Unless there's anything else, man. Solid pod.
That's it. A lot of fun.